Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. For this last segment, before I jump into all the details around this last topic, one last time, if you guys have any questions or comments you want to make during today's show, to use the tip and donations link, GSMCPodcast.net, as you see there on your screen. By using this link, your questions will pop up in my chat box. I can read them on air and get your guys' thoughts, perspective on anything I say or on the topic at hand. It's a lot more engaging and it's a massive help for this show as well as all the other shows across the network. So if you would, use the tip and donations link, GSMCPodcast.net. I'll greatly appreciate it, and everybody at the network as well would send a big thank you to you guys for doing that. But on the last topic on today's show, to wrap up the week, I'm sure most of you have seen it, have heard other people talking about it. Jason Kelce addressing those ESPN reports that say he is the newest member of the Monday Night Countdown pregame show for Monday Night Football, obviously. If you aren't aware, already on that crew, Scott Van Pelt, Ryan Clark, Marcus Spears. They had RG3 on there a few times. I know they had Larry Fitzgerald as well at some points. Maybe not every pregame, but he was on there last season. So now Jason Kelce reportedly, allegedly has agreed to be on that show. For the first time, Jason Kelce talked about it on his podcast, the New Heights podcast with his brother Travis Kelce, and he basically said to start, that nothing has been inked on paper yet, but regardless of that, it was a tremendous honor, in his words, to be considered for a role like this. He's never been in broadcasting or anything like that. He's obviously been playing. He has a podcast, but this is a very new realm for him, and he goes more into it in his podcast about trying this new realm after playing, and how he'll have to learn really what this whole new area entails, what sort of ins and outs there is to this business. But he definitely hasn't said no to it, but he made sure to say that it isn't 1,000% going to happen. He reportedly received offers from other networks as well. As soon as he announced his retirement, NBC was at his door, CBS. Those pregame shows were offering a role similar to this that ESPN did. According to The Athletic's Andrew Marchand, he mentioned that Amazon could have included in a deal for for Jason Kelce to join their Thursday night football pregame show. If he were to do that, they could have taken in his New Heights podcast with his brother, Travis Kelce, to be featured on Amazon Prime exclusively as their new home. Right now it's being shown on YouTube. Maybe they could have worked out a deal there with Amazon to bring the podcast over, as well as getting Jason Kelce to join that crew. But nothing has been reported from there. It was an offer, but it seems like it just seems like a matter of time before Jason Kelce officially signs to ESPN. On that topic, he said, throughout the whole process, meeting and talking to everybody over at ESPN, it became apparent that it was really the right fit at the end of the day, something that I'm really, really looking forward to in this next phase. So he seems pretty content, pretty sure that this is the right move, but he has to still sign, apparently. There is still time. He doesn't have to do it now. I'm sure ESPN feel that they're close with Jason Kelce, and to bring him in, I don't have to explain what they're getting in Jason Kelce. If you watch the podcast or if you don't watch the podcast, you see it everywhere on social media or on the internet. People are interested in what he's saying. He has some pretty funny clips out there. He is very entertaining. Whether it's at a Bills game, at a Super Bowl party, on his podcast, people will tune in to see Jason Kelce. And if ESPN is able to pull this off, bearing any 180-degree turns on his decision, I think this would work perfectly for both ESPN and Jason Kelce. Not only for ESPN to bring in Kelce and get his insights, really pick his brain to give the audience a new perspective from an offensive lineman, seeing the game differently than maybe a Ryan Clark who played defense, who played safety, Marcus Spears as well. You get a different perspective from Jason Kelce, and especially just coming off of retirement, getting a new feel for the league and some of these guys that are still currently playing, who he played against or with. I think all of that, a lot of people will tune in, and I think ESPN is doing the right thing by just waiting, chomping at the bit to see which player retires next and trying to entice them into joining them in some facet. Kelce has the personality, the knowledge, like I mentioned, to be great at this job. I expect him to sign. It seems pretty evident now, and I would be looking forward to it a lot if he signed and joining that ESPN crew. Similarly, to pivot into something related to this, ESPN continues to add these guys on. It is reported that Bill Belichick also plans to be a recurring guest on the Manning Cast, an alternate streaming option if you choose not to go the traditional route with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. There is the Manning Cast, and it is reported that Bill Belichick could be a reoccurring guest on there. So, you have Peyton Manning, Eli, and Bill Belichick all talking about football. That, again, is very much must-see TV for anybody to listen to some of the greatest minds and players in the league. That certainly seems like the right way to go if you're ESPN. And also on Bill Belichick, he recently featured on the Pat McAfee show NFL Draft Spectacular, covering the entirety of the first round. If you tuned in or just saw a clip of it afterwards, they seem to have agreed prematurely on Bill Belichick also being a reoccurring guest on the Pat McAfee show. I'm sure they have to figure out the dates and when what he'll be talking about, but they seem to have just a verbal agreement to have Bill Belichick on there. I'm sure Pat McAfee would love that. He wasn't going to say no, so Bill Belichick could be another one, another former player, former player or coach involved with ESPN. He hasn't officially retired, so that's the only difference there with Jason Kelce, like I was talking about. But we're going to be seeing a lot of Bill Belichick on ESPN apparently this coming season. Now that he didn't really get a head coaching job, he'll still be involved in the NFL in some facet. And again, I think that's great. Picking the brain of Bill Belichick. He sort of opened up a little bit on the Pat McAfee show. You saw him smile a little bit more. He seemed to be having fun, cracking some jokes, laughing. I'm sure it was very awkward for some people to see Bill Belichick like that, but I thought it was cool seeing him from a different perspective, under a different light. And just to wrap it up, touching on other subjects in broadcasting, I won't go too much into it. You have Tom Brady over at Fox. He's projected to be on the A team there. I can't remember the name of the play-by-play announcer now. It's Kevin Burkhardt. He's going to be with him in the booth for those Fox games. Of course, if he doesn't unretire and play for the Las Vegas Raiders, that is his plan right now, but you never know with Tom Brady. Matt Ryan will be on NFL Today. I talked about that on a YouTube short. He'll be on that pregame show for the CBS games. And all these guys are now just transitioning to television. I think it's great, starting with Jason Kelce going to ESPN, and these other guys as well. It is a new sort of wave of players coming in and taking over the broadcasting side now. It is this massive cycle that just continues to go on from the NFL to the broadcasting side. And on the Jason Kelce note, one more thing I'll say is that, with Jason Kelce now being on there and Travis also being a prominent member of this podcast, it is both of theirs, and him appearing more and more on television, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, similar to the Pat McAfee show that started on YouTube, if the New Heights podcast also ended up featuring on ESPN as well as YouTube. That similar sort of model you see with the Pat McAfee show. They're on ESPN for an hour or two, then they continue on YouTube. I wouldn't be surprised if the Kelces work out a deal like this with ESPN, not for their benefit, but for both the company and Jason Kelce. It just seems too obvious not to happen. I'm sure both would be happy to work it out if the numbers align. But that's really the last thing I wanted to mention there. It all just continues to cycle on through. Jason Kelce, we could be seeing him on Monday nights. I'm hoping that that is the case, but he still has to confirm it. But on that note, and wrapping up with ESPN and Jason Kelce, that'll do it for today's episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. I want to thank you guys for tuning into today's episode. And just please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as keeping up with the social media platforms around the network on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok for more of the network's content outside of sports as well. If you want to see more of me and this show, check out the GSMC Sports Network channel and the Podcast Network channel on YouTube for all the live recorded shows, full shows that are all on both channels. YouTube Shorts are all posted on both of those channels as well, on top of the individual segment videos that if you missed a certain segment or don't have time to watch a whole show, you have the opportunity to see just specific segment videos on both of the YouTube channels as well. And as a reminder, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time to talk more NFL and just football in general with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host, signing off for this week. Hopefully you guys all have a great weekend, and I hope to see you guys back here joining me on Monday.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go